Yo, what's up, everybody? This is my video about the Runcam 5 HD camera. I hesitate to call this a review. Basically, my goal here is to see, with the amount of video editing knowledge I have, which is, relatively amateurish. I have been editing FPV footage for a couple of years. I'm not a super pro editor. My goal over the past couple of weeks of messing with this camera is to try to get this to look as close to a GoPro Session, or at least how my videos look when they come out of a session. Why bother with this, I guess, is a good question, because the session is pretty straightforward. Typically, my workflow, or the way I record videos with a session or a full-size hero, is I use ProTune Flat and SuperView, usually, actually almost always in 2.7K 30. Then I take my videos, I dump them in Premiere. I have a LUT that I use, or sometimes I don't, that basically converts the flat footage into something that looks a little more natural, or I might just raise the saturation myself. Typically I use a low sharpness setting here, and I add sharpness in Premiere. We're going to try to get the same kind of final product out of the Runcam 5. And this is after a couple of weeks of me using this camera and messing around with a few different techniques. Obviously, the number one thing is going to be getting a field of view that's similar to the session. And I'm not going to talk too much about how I did that. I tried a few different things. If you search hard enough on the internet, you'll find utility or method that works best for you. I found one that I like. Again, I'm not going to give any, this is not a tutorial, so I'm not going to get into what I'm using or how that works, because I know GoPro is really kind of touchy about that feature. So there's a few different ways to kind of stretch the image, the 4x3 image that comes out of the Runcam 5, to make it look like it would if you're recording with the session. My advice would be, if you're going to use this camera, is to search around out there and kind of try out the methods that are available and see which one works for you. I found one that I like, so that's the one, that's what you'll see. And I have a day flight and a night flight. What I'm going to show you is the raw image first, and then I'm going to, in steps, show you from raw to stretched, and then the color correction layer that I add in Premiere, and you'll kind of be able to see as we go along. For the daytime flight, I did use a glass ND16 filter, because that's what I normally use on the session. What I don't like about the Runcam, and actually it's not something I don't like, because my workflow is my workflow, and it is a little bit longer with the Runcam 5 to get to the point where it's similar at all to the session, but that doesn't bother me much. It's not that much, that many more steps. But if, you were the kind of person that just gets the video file off the camera and just kind of uploads it raw, or just, cuts out their clips, and you don't want to touch or mess with the video too much in an editor, then I'd have a hard time recommending this. Number one, you don't have a lot of control over the picture quality using the camera settings, and I'll show you that here in a sec. There's not much you can do to fine-tune the quality of the image, and I guess that's a fault in the lack of a kind of full-fledged firmware or whatever for this camera. The sensor in here is good. This is a Sony 4x3 sensor in here, and the image sensor in here is really good in my opinion. What the GoPro has going for it is there's more control over the settings of the camera. There's not really much to do here. Also, the resolution modes are a little bit difficult to understand. Like I said, I use 2.7K 30 on this all my GoPros when I record FPV. The closest option you can get to that on the Runcam is to record in, I think it's called 1440p, which will give you a 1920 by 1440 4x3 image, not stretched, and it's only available in 60 frames a second. I like to record in 30, so you can change from 60 to 30 in post. Not really ideal. What's strange is I know this camera will actually record in 30 frames per second in that resolution mode, because in the night flight that I have, there's a feature that I messed around with that I was trying to figure out exactly what it did. It's called I think it's called low light compensation, and typically on a GoPro, low light compensation means that the camera will reduce the recording frame rate in low light to allow the shutter to stay open longer and to get a brighter image at night. What's interesting, what I've discovered, is that with low light compensation on the Runcam, At night, the frame rate drops to 30, but the output file you get is still a 60 frames per second file, which is kind of wonky. So it does actually record in 30 at night with that feature on, but you're still getting a 60 frames per second output file. I wish you could just use this in 1440p 30, but you can't. But again, not the end of the world. The bottom line, like I said, is the sensor in here is good enough in terms of quality compared to the Session, in my opinion, that with a little bit of coercion and finagling, you can get this to get somewhat close to this. Why not just get the Session? Well, you know, I mean, like everybody's been saying for a while now, this is discontinued, even though you still can find them. But eventually, you know, this will go away and we'll have to switch to something else. And I have a, you know, the larger full-size Hero 7, but it annoys the crap out of me to put all that weight on my quad. It's another benefit of the Runcam. It is significantly lighter than even the Session. I think it's almost 20 grams lighter. It's 60 and change versus like 80 or something like that. It's interesting how you change the camera settings. There is no Wi-Fi or Bluetooth radios in here, so you have to point the camera at a QR code that the app generates after changing your settings. You can edit an INI text file that's stored on the memory card. Not the worst thing in the world. You get kind of used to it. I actually, you know, I typically keep my Wi-Fi or my wireless connections off on all my GoPros. So if I want to change settings on a Session, I have to go into that little menu, tiny little annoying menu, turn my wireless connections on, connect my phone. By the time you get into the phone, you're able to change settings. Then when you're done, you have to go, you know, I turn my, it's kind of an annoying process on the Session. It's easier on the big GoPro because of the touchscreen, but I find this to be fairly convenient. I could probably get my settings changed just as fast, or if not faster, on the Runcam once you kind of get the hang of how it works. Another key thing, which if you've watched any videos of this, I'm sure you know this already, but has to be said, is that these things are about the same size. So your TPU mounts and accessories, ND filter mounts, if you have them, if you use the ones like this that I use, where the TPU mount has a little slot in the front for the glass ND filter, you know, all that stuff just works, so that's a big plus. It's a cool little camera. It's definitely doable. It's a little bit of a shame GoPro kind of has a stranglehold on the field of view we all love so much. It's their thing, so, you know, the best you can do is try to, I don't know, get the, you know, again, super view is just really, really good. That's always going to be, I think, for FPV pilots that, you know, keep people using the GoPro cameras almost no matter what, is that super view, the field of view and super view is just so perfect for FPV, and it's hard to replicate exactly. For the daytime flight, what I did was I lowered the sharpness setting and the saturation setting to kind of mimic flat, which is what I normally record in GoPro flat. I had tried lowering the contrast as well, but when I turned the contrast down to 1, I got a really, really bad image, so I ended up putting the contrast back up to the default 2. Yeah, so stick around, check it out, and, you know, let me know what you think. Was I successful at all in getting this camera to look at all like the Session? Check out some of my other videos on my channel. You can see where I normally record the Session to compare. I could work with this camera if I had to. I guess if once the Session goes completely away or gets ridiculously expensive because of the rarity of it, you know, for 99 bucks, this is definitely a good camera. Like, the bottom line is the image sensor in here is good. The form factor is exactly correct. Because the image sensor is good in here, you know, you're getting an image that's workable. So it just requires some massaging to kind of get it up to the level of the GoPro. Thanks for watching.
you in my way. Thank you so much, oh wow, okay. Pop it, see me on your screen. Sit back and watch, show you what I mean. Can't stop it, doody-doody-doo. La-la-dee-da, all because of you. So pop it, like a wheelie should. I'm up on your mind, feeling pretty good. Don't stop it, fit you in my way. Thank you so much, oh wow, okay. Every day. And you got my heart in the palm of your hand. I wanna be more than friends. Hey, it's been so long since the day we